We lost it in telecom, by the way.
We lost what?
We lost it in you know, what are you, there's somebody here from Verizon. If you go all over the world, all over Southeast Asia, the Indo-Pacific, there's not a lot of US or European telecommunications equipment, right? There just isn't. It doesn't exist. It's pretty much all Chinese because it's cheaper and just as good. So what do you think that means? It means those countries are just a little bit closer to China. And the balance, that's bad for America, right?
大家好，欢迎来到花花说。雷蒙多是美国现任商务部长。雷蒙多发言，注意，这已经不是一场普通的科技竞赛。3年前，美国锁死中国 AI 芯片，结果呢？3周后，华为对面街道冒出神秘新公司。这场 AI 军备竞赛比核战争更难防。全球电信网络已被中国占领，美国竟然后知后觉，是全面脱钩还是暗战继续？接下来你要看到的真相让白宫彻夜难眠，请看前方发来的报道。
A perfect time, perfect audience to have this conversation. That clip that we just showed has echoed across boardrooms, across groups like this. I think people are coming to the realization that we have two different systems of AI developing, one in the West and one that's centered in China. Can you explain where we are in this arms race? Help frame what is an AI arms race? Where are we? What does it mean to businesses here in the U.S.?
Yeah, thank you. Well, thank you for having me. Hello, everybody. I agree with Kissinger. It is much more complex than the nuclear arms race and different. But for example, when I was talking about chips, I mean, chips are tiny, right? They're very hard to track, easy to have transshipment. You send some to Saudi Arabia or someplace in the Middle East and suddenly they find themselves in China. It's a different game than nuclear weapons. Then there were two superpowers, kind of hard to hide a nuclear power plant or nuclear facility. So it's more complicated. The other thing is AI is business, every business, right? What's an AI business? A hospital, a manufacturing company, KPMG, everyone's going to use AI. So it makes it much more complicated. Here's how I think about it. There is an arms race in the following respect. China wants the world to run on Chinese AI, Huawei, SMIC, DeepSeek, Huawei chips. And they want to use AI and their technology as a way to bring countries closer to them. The US should want that also. That's about our economic prosperity, but also our national security. So I think of it, there's a few things. Number one, we always want to be ahead of the Chinese, like in the nuclear arms race, right? We want to be stronger, which means we have to innovate faster. We want to have bigger models, faster models, better chips, etc. Always want to be ahead relative to China and absolutely to China. We want to make sure that no countries are getting if we are ahead, we want to make sure, make no mistake about it, China wants to be ahead because AI is applied to nuclear weapons, AI is applied to bioterrorism, AI is applied to the military, makes them stronger, so we can't let that happen. But the thing that I think is just as important, which most people don't think about, is what I was saying. Like Huawei, for example, in telecommunications. I don't know where you guys practice, it's a global firm, but all of Africa, all of Central America, all of South America, all runs telecom is Huawei. And that accrues to China's strength. So what I'd say when I was in office was, yeah, the reason that makes it so hard is we have to protect our most leading edge stuff, but we also want to diffuse our technology. Because we want Europe, Africa, Mexico, Southeast Asia, running on US AI, India, running on US AI models, US AI data centers, US AI chips, because that brings the world closer to us, and that's a tricky balance.
Where are we?
And we lost it in telecom, by the way.
We lost what?
We lost it in you know, what are you, there's somebody here from Verizon. If you go all over the world, all over Southeast Asia, the Indo-Pacific, there's not a lot of US or European telecommunications equipment, right? There just isn't. It doesn't exist. It's pretty much all Chinese because it's cheaper and just as good. So what do you think that means? It means those countries are just a little bit closer to China. And the balance, that's bad for America, right? Geopolitics, we need a balance of power. We need to draw these countries closer to us. And so we ought to use our technology to help them make their industries better and more AI enabled, because then they'll want to be closer to America.
Where are we today? How would you position the winners and losers in the AI arms race today? Is the U.S. ahead?
Yes.
And what has to happen?
Like barely.
Just barely. What has to happen for U.S.? Is it restricting chips? Is it
so hard?
What are the factors?
So, what I was saying there on that clip, in the first Trump administration, they correctly started to get very focused on Huawei and SMIC and other Chinese champions. But what they did was they would add Chinese companies, YMTC, to what's called the entity list, the blacklist. Made it hard to sell things to those individual companies. But, you know, China, what do you think China does? Okay, if I can't sell to Huawei, guess what? And 3 weeks later, there's XYZ company across the street from Huawei with all Huawei employees, not called Huawei. So then you have to put that company on the entity list. I said, it's a fool's errand. I said, it's like whack-a-mole. And it was. I was quoted in the front page of the Wall Street Journal saying it was a fool's errand. Some people didn't like my view. You may not agree with me, but I'm telling you, I lived it. It's impossible to keep up. So what I said was, instead, what I think we should do is figure out what are the key choke point technologies. Like one area where the US and Europe is way ahead of China is in the semiconductor equipment, the EUV equipment. So instead of saying, and the most sophisticated equipment, or even the software actually, and the most sophisticated chips, the US is ahead and Europe is ahead. So instead of saying, okay, just Huawei, you can't have this, we say we're not going to sell any EUV equipment to China, period. Now, some people said, that's too radical, that's decoupling. I don't think it is. I think we have an $800 billion trading relationship with China. I think that's a good thing. I am opposed to decoupling. I am opposed to trading. I'm for trading with China. But what I do think is we have to say, what are these critical choke points that allow us to stay ahead, however incrementally, and deny the whole country of China, and by the way, China's allies. I mean, it doesn't really help to sell it to Malaysia. The minute you sell a piece of EUV to Malaysia, it's in China. So it's actually, you know, I used to say, and like I was criticized a lot for what I did, and you know, I'd be like, oh, it's easy from the cheap seats. This is tough stuff. How do you decide which equipment, which countries, updating it? It's a complicated analysis.
You mentioned the trading relationship is massive. It is almost $1 trillion trading relationship with China. How do you restrict this? What's their retaliation to the restriction? And how do you balance this diplomacy without harming the interest of American business?
So here's the thing. China is very good at nuance. The United States political system, or the US, we're not good at nuance, which is unfortunate because this requires a constant diplomacy, constant nuance and trading. And so that's what it requires. More engagement, more talking, more commercial ties. But in America now, there's a couple things in America that are still bipartisan. And one of them is being tough on China. And I think it's important to be tough on China. How you balance it is you say there is a very narrow group of products necessary for our national security. These are products where we're ahead. China can't buy them from another country, and we're going to deny this to China because we don't want them to have a military advantage. It's going to be narrow. But on top of that, I think you need to show up in China. I was the first Commerce Secretary in 7 years to go to China. And I was criticized. A lot of Republicans on Capitol Hill had to go testify. Why am I weak on China by showing up in China? I was the only cabinet secretary in President Biden's term to go not just to Beijing, but I went to Shanghai. I actually went to the Disney park in Shanghai. I called Bob Iger ahead of time. I said, hey, I think this is good. Will you host me? Blah, blah, blah. Widely criticized that I did that. You're soft on China. You tell me how an amusement park hurts our national security. It doesn't. It's ridiculous. What's my point? If you go to China right now, there's no American tourists. Very few. Very few American tourists. Very few, businesses are retrenching. I was with Bob, the other guy that runs Disney, the other day. Sales are down in Shanghai Park. I think that's bad for America. I think you need to show up in China. No students. There's the Schwarzman campus of NYU in Shanghai. Almost no American students there. So I think that will lead to escalation with China. And so I think the way to do it is, I'm not stupid. I would say this to the Republicans. I understand China is our greatest threat. I understand they're our greatest strategic competitor. No kidding. But decoupling totally will lead to escalation, which I think is dangerous. So my thing is, trade where you can. Don't trade where you can't, but communicate constantly. And I'll tell you now, there's a dangerous level of, in my view, dangerous level of lack of communication and lack of back channel, which I think can only lead to escalation, risk of miscalculation. But it's hard.
If there's two paths that we could take, what are the decisions that are being made right now, and how there was Trump announced a AI policy that was announced, I guess, last week. What does that do to the relationship, and how does that what kind of a trajectory does that put us on?
I thought it was good policy. His set of executive orders, I thought they were, I think they were really largely very good. I know, having written a few executive orders for my old boss, you can write an executive order. That's pretty easy. The hard stuff is implementing it. So we'll see if they implement it. But at least on paper, I thought it was directionally all good stuff. I think, the Chinese respect power, the Chinese respect strength, and the Chinese respect straight talk. So these are the facts. We want to beat them. We want to be ahead. We want to protect the economic and national security interests of our country, period. We want Europe, we want the rest of the world. We want as many companies in the world using American AI technologies and chips, period. So it's game on, let's go compete. And I think that's, the way you have to think about it. I do think this. We will not win without allies. China is too big. China is too big, and they are very close to all the countries in Southeast Asia.
视频看完了，这是一个关于中美人工智能竞争的深度评论。雷蒙多指出，当前 AI 竞赛比传统核军备竞赛更为复杂，因其兼具商业与地缘政治双重属性。中国正通过华为等科技企业 推动其技术标准全球化，而美国则需在保持技术领先以维护国家安全之间寻求平衡。雷蒙多认为，美国目前在 AI 领域仅保持微弱领先优势，且已在电信基础设施领域失去了主导地位。针对中国的技术封锁策略效果有限，如同打地鼠游戏般难以持续。更有效的做法是聚焦关键核心技术，如 EUV 光刻设备的管控，而非全面脱钩。雷蒙多强调，美国需避免过度隔绝与中国的联系。当前，美国企业、学生和游客在华急剧减少，这种脱钩趋势反而可能加剧误判风险。理想策略是在国家安全相关核心领域实施严格限制，同时在更广泛领域保持贸易往来，以人文交流。最终胜负将取决于技术创新能力，以联盟体系建设。美国需要的是共同合作，通过技术扩散增强全球影响力。在这场定义未来科技格局的竞争中，是否能保持领先，那是个未知数。毕竟现在的中国越来越强。谢谢大家观看，喜欢请点赞、评论加订阅。明天见，拜拜。